So you can see the PowerPoint, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so we had started our discussion on waves after a brief discussion on the history of how it was, sorry, how it was concluded that light is a form of electromagnetic wave, just before the next phase when the quantum nature of light and other particles was discovered and analyzed. So right before that, but the electromagnetic nature is as important as the quantum nature because there are several. Just a second, please. Yes, I'm back. Yes, so electromagnetic nature of wave, as I told you, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that light has dual character, and there are several phenomena where there is interaction between light and light, where this electromagnetic wave nature of light is observed, and therefore the analysis of this phenomenon, this nature, is absolutely important. Okay, and we saw that in a traveling wave it is the momentum and the energy that moves through, and there is no movement of the medium, there is no bodily movement of the medium. And this is how a typical electromagnetic wave looks, with the electric field, magnetic field, and direction of propagation mutually perpendicular to each other. Okay, so waves can be longitudinal and transverse. Longitudinal, where the particles of the medium vibrate in a direction same as the direction of propagation of the wave, and transverse, where they vibrate in a direction perpendicular to the direction of motion. Okay, so and we saw that this is the most general form of the wave equation, where the disturbance is traveling with a certain velocity v. And then we said that let us take the simplest possible profile, which is the sine or the cosine profile, which are representatives of the harmonic waves. So we quickly recapitulated some definitions: frequency, time period, wavelength. Okay, and then using the wavelength, which we called the spatial period, because the profile of the wave will be same if you travel lambda distance on it. And so using that property, yes,
बिकॉज हम सब कुछ यूज करते हैं, तो ये सब कुछ यूज करना चाहिए। पागल की तरह इसलिए पेन नहीं, पेंसिल का भी जरूरत पड़ता है, रेजर का भी जरूरत पड़ता है,
does
शार्पनर का
someone have a question? Okay, so from the spatial period, that is wavelength lambda, we got a new parameter called wave number, given by k equal to 2 pi by lambda, or reciprocal wavelength. And using the temporal period t, which is the time period, which means that after time t we would get back the same profile of the wave, we got the relation velocity equal to frequency into wavelength. So these are two relations which are absolutely important, and using these two relations we finally arrived at the known expression of a progressive wave, that is psi xt equal to a sine kx minus omega t, right? Of course this is in the in one dimension. When the wave is propagating just along the x direction, then we represent it using this kind of an equation. All right, so of course if you are if you are working in 3 dimensions, then we replace k by k vector and x by position vector, and we'll see that later on. So this is the most important expression right now, because in all our analysis of all the optical phenomena that we are going to study, that we are going to discuss in future, whenever you see this expression, you will understand that we are basically representing a ray of light. Okay. Now we have to remember this also, we discussed that such waves have infinite extent. There is no restriction on the space coordinate. Okay. But throughout this infinite extent, the profile remains unchanged. That is, it remains A sine kx minus omega t. So A remains the amplitude undeterred, K remains the wavelength, and omega remains the frequency. Of course, this is an ideal situation because we are considering a situation where there are no hindrances to the path of the wave, there is no attenuation, there is no decrease of amplitude, etc. But this is therefore this is an ideal condition. However, this fact that it consists of a unique frequency and a unique wavelength leads us to name such waves as monochromatic waves, where mono means single and chroma means color. So these are waves of single color. So you cannot represent white light by such an equation, because you know white light is composite in nature and white light has several colors in it. So when you are representing a ray of light by this expression A sine kx minus omega t, you have to understand very clearly that you are representing a monochromatic wave. So the source you are using must emit light of a single color. Okay. The moment you use a polychromatic source, or the normal sources of light that we use at home, then we will have to cater to a different kind of equation, which we'll see later on. Now, of course, in the laboratory, it is not possible to absolutely, what should I say, alienate a single color from all others. There is always overlapping and there is always a certain spread in the frequency or wavelength, and they are related. So when manufacturers are constructing monochromatic sources of light, their goal is to reduce this spread in the frequency or wavelength. Okay, so if the range or the spread in frequency is delta nu, or the spread in wavelength is delta lambda, then the goal is to make it as small as possible. Okay, and so it is the wave that we get is not perfectly monochromatic, but it is as close to a monochromatic wave as possible, and therefore we call them pseudo monochromatic waves. Okay, and we must remember that the entire range of electromagnetic waves form this class. So you can use this equation to express electromagnetic wave from anywhere in the spectrum. Okay, so this I showed you is the spectrum, the entire of which is representable using this equation when traveling in a single direction. However, the very small portion of this spectrum, from about 4000 angstrom to about 7000 angstrom, forms the visible range, the range that we can see with our eyes, the range that can activate our optic nerves so that we can see this. Okay, the rest of the regions of this spectrum are all invisible in the sense that they do not activate our optic nerves, so we cannot see those portions, but they are very much there all the time. And in fact, your body or the laptop you are using or the mobile phone you are using or everything around you, they are all the time, continuously they are emitting infrared radiation because of their temperature, because of our body temperature. We emit thermal radiation all the time, and this thermal radiation lies in this range. Okay, just beyond the red, so it's called the infrared region. UV rays are coming in all the time. Okay, from the space, X-rays, gamma rays, these are all the time they're coming in. Communication, the fact that we are being able to conduct our classes, we are able to talk over the phone, we are able to watch television channels, these are all because of long range communication waves. They are there everywhere in the atmosphere. They are traveling through the atmosphere from the distributing centers to the receiving centers all the time. Okay, so these rays are all existing, but we cannot see them. But of course we can't say that we cannot feel their presence, because we can always feel the heat of the sun, which is thermal radiation. We are all the time we are using the communication waves for our different requirements. We are using X-rays, etc. Okay, microwaves. In most of you must be having a microwave at home, so inside that the the food that is cooked or the food that is being heated up, warmed up, is because of the microwave radiation, and all of them follow this particular equation. Okay, so I'm telling you all this just to insist that this equation is not just unique of visible light, but it is applicable to the entire range. Okay, so and then we say I discussed how you can think of light as an electromagnetic wave. Okay, so the simultaneous existence of the electric field and the magnetic field, in fact the movement of the charge that is responsible for the entire of electricity and magnetism taken together, which was of course uh, summarized in the 4 equations by Maxwell, which I am sure that you have a little idea of, but not very, you don't know very much in detail about Maxwell's equations, but you'll do Maxwell's equations in one of the next semesters. So you'll get to know about that. Just remember that out of his comprehensive study of electromagnetic waves, the unique result that comes out is that from his 4 equations, he came to show that the waves travel with this velocity, which is the highest velocity that anything can attain in this universe, and that it was seen that the value of this velocity matches with the experimentally observed values of velocity of light, so that we can conclude safely now that light is a form of electromagnetism. Okay. Now, yes, so we had just started this. So we will now talk in some detail about these definitions related to waves, and which we are going to require in our future discussions. So the first thing is a wavefront. Now, what is a wavefront? Now, theoretical definition of a wavefront is this, the thing that I have written in black bold, is that the locus of all points at which the phase of vibration of a physical quantity is the same. Okay, so when there is a wave traveling and you try to see the phase of vibration of several points taken together, then all the points that you see are vibrating in the same phase. If you imagine that you take a pencil and draw a line through all the points that are vibrating with the same phase at a particular instant of time, then that line that you have drawn with your pencil is what is forming the wavefront at that particular point, at that particular time. Okay, so when a wave propagates, as you know that alternate crests and troughs move outwards from the point of generation. Now all the points lying on a crest, see this is a crest here, the green circle, and can everyone see the green circles moving outwards? So this is an imaginary picture of the water ripples that are created when you drop a stone in a stagnant pond, on the surface of a stagnant pond. Okay, so these green circles are the crests. Okay, so all the points that lie on this green circle have the same phase. They are all simultaneously at the highest position, maximum upward displacement, and therefore they are in the same phase. So that forms a wavefront. Similarly, if I could have drawn, I did not, if I could have drawn a line along the trough, but you can see the trough, okay? See, this is the trough. The shade here shows the trough. Can you all see the trough? I'm showing with my pointer. So all points lying on the trough are also in the same phase. They are in their maximum downward displacement, and hence they are in the same phase. So these are the wavefronts, okay, outward. So in this case, for example, we can see that these are outward propagating circles, okay. If you now draw an imaginary line from the source, where is my pointer? Yes, from the source towards the radius, towards the periphery, you know, joining all these wavefronts and give it an outward arrow, then that is what is known as a ray. So from the source, if you draw lines radially outwards, then those will be the rays. So what is a ray? A ray is an imaginary line along the direction of propagation of the wave, okay, an imaginary line along the direction. So you can see here the waves are propagating in this direction, the outward circles. So an imaginary line drawn along the direction of propagation of wave is called a ray. They are straight lines perpendicular to the wavefront. This is my request to all of you, that these are very, very basic concepts, okay. So if you are paying attention to the class, and if you miss anything, that is, if you see that you are not understanding anything, even if it is because of the language, যদি কারোর ইংলিশ ফলো করতে অসুবিধা হয়, তাহলেও প্লিজ unmute and tell me, okay, I will re-explain. But these concepts need to be very, very clear. These are very basic concepts and they need to be very, very clear, okay. So please don't hesitate to unmute and ask me a question if you have a doubt or a confusion, or even if you want me to repeat some portion, please don't hesitate to unmute and say so, okay. Okay, so next we see how to determine the shape of a wavefront. How do we realize what the shape of a wavefront will be? Of course, the shape of the wavefront will depend on the kind of source of light. So now let us switch over entirely to light, okay. Restrict our discussion to visible light now. So it will depend on the kind of source of light. For example, if we have a point source, again this is an imaginary concept, but suppose you have you have a source of light, and then in front of it you have a cardboard, you keep a cardboard, okay, and you make a hole on the cardboard with a very fine pin, alpin দিয়ে কার্ডবোর্ডের উপর একটা হোল বানালে, so the cardboard will not allow any of the light from the source to come through. Only through that small pinhole some light will come in, okay. So you can imagine this small pinhole to be a point source of light. Clear to everybody? So if you have such a point source of light, then from that point source light rays will travel in all directions in 3 dimensions. So what will be the wavefronts looking like? They will look like spheres, concentric spheres with the center at the position of the point source. And the rays will be straight lines drawn radially outwards from the source and away from the source, perpendicularly through the wavefronts, that is through these concentric circles, okay. even for a spherical source, if you have a small spherical source, we get these days fancy lights which are spherical in shape, LED lights. So that will also emit light in all directions in 3 dimensions, and for that also the wavefronts will be spherical in shape. Suppose you have this kind of a long wire or a long cylinder. Imagine a tube light held vertically. Okay, so what will be the wavefronts like? The wavefronts will be cylindrical surfaces of gradually increasing radius, and the rays will be like this. Okay, horizontally outwards, centered at the source, moving horizontally outwards, cutting the cylindrical surfaces radially. So this is the top view for you. Okay. Then the most common kind of rays that we draw in our optical diagrams, all of you have done some amount of optics in your secondary and higher secondary. Okay? You have drawn ray diagrams for your geometrical optics. And remember, all the time we draw parallel rays. So what will be the nature of the wavefront for parallel rays? You have to keep in mind that the rays will cut the wavefronts perpendicularly. They will go past the wavefronts in a perpendicular, they will be perpendicular to the wavefronts. So what will be the shape of a surface that is perpendicular to a group of parallel lines? Plane surfaces. So this is how a plane wavefront looks like. Okay, see this picture taken from the internet. This actually shows you how the plane wavefront propagates. These are not separate slides. You have to understand that. এগুলো কিন্তু আলাদা আলাদা এরকম স্কোয়ার কার্ডবোর্ডস রাখা নয়. This shows you the gradual change in position of the wavefront. This red plane is the wavefront, and it shows you the gradual change in the position of the wavefront. So wavefronts are planes parallel to each other. The source is placed at infinity, and the rays are parallel to each other, normal to the planes. You see, these are the rays normal to the plane, or you can draw it like this. These are the rays, and these lines which we have drawn in 2 dimension, so they are looking like lines. Okay, can you imagine? You can see you are actually observing from a side, so you are only seeing that edge of the plane. So these are the plane wavefronts. Is the concept of wavefronts clear to everybody? Please, I want a yes or no or okay or something like that. Yes, so because this is very, very important, because you will need to understand what wavefronts are when you start analyzing a certain optical situation. Okay, now we move over to one of the most important principles of physical optics, that is Huygens principles. Okay, this was given in 1678, so very, very, very ancient 17th century, when Newton's concept of corpuscular theory of light was, prevalent. So, and it has been like this all the time in all fields. When someone attains a position in his subject where he has given, say, he has done 100, he has written 100 papers, and out of those 90 papers have been proven to be right, and most of the laws of nature are after him, then whatever he says, people tend to take that for granted. So in the 17th century, Newton's position was like that, because he had so long been giving laws and theories which were actually explaining things that are happening in nature, and people were doing experiments to prove that those theories, and they had been proven, and they were being utilized in reality. So whatever he said was taken for granted. No one possibly doubted them, and no one possibly felt like arguing about those theories to be wrong. But in science, you cannot ever say that something is 100% correct. Okay? Because that is science. Science is ever evolving. So even if you are 100% sure about something, still you must keep that 100 to 99.9 and keep a 0.1% doubt in your mind.
मेरे घुड़ी ढोकाबी एन हातुड़ी তার পেরে ওই উপায় তার না
Ma'am, I guess there's some network problem and you're